The lanterns beyond the first dawn, it is said that in the drift between dusk and waking, when the world loosens its hold on certainty, an old story begins to breathe again. It comes softly like the hush of wind across a forgotten plain, or the echo of a name no longer spoken. It is the story of the first wanderers, and of the lanterns they carried, not lit by flame, but by the tender shimmer of the earliest dawn. Some believe these lanterns were not crafted at all, but found, as if the sky itself had shed small fragments of sunrise for human parents to cradle. Others whisper that they were shaped from a dust older than memory, gathered from the high ridges where night met day in a trembling line of gold. But all versions agree on one thing. Their glow was not meant to burn. It was meant to remember. Tonight, as you settle deeper into the quiet, let us lift that veil of ancient silence. Let us step into the first breath of human wonder, where the world was still young, and every stone, every shadow, carried the tremor of a newborn sky. Imagine an open plain, so wide and unbroken that sound has nowhere to rest. Beneath a sky, the color of soft clay and ash-blue dawn, something stirs. Faint, floating, as delicate as a single memory rising from sleep. There in the center of the quiet field rests a cluster of dim, shimmering globes. At first glance, they appear to be nothing more than frost caught in morning light. But as the horizon brightens, their inner glow flickers, drifting across the ground like breaths of pale gold. They do not smoke nor flicker like fire. Their light moves in a slow pulse, as though remembering a rhythm older than footsteps, older than speech. Some say the first humans found these globes scattered across the earth after a night unlike any before. A night when the stars dimmed and a strange stillness laid over the listen, as if the sky itself had exhaled and left part of its breath behind. Others believe the globes were carried in the hands of dawn spirits who crossed the threshold between worlds before retreating again beyond the veil. Whatever their origin, their presence feels like an invitation. Gentle, patient, waiting. You may imagine yourself stepping closer, feeling the cold earth beneath your feet. The air is soft, not yet warmed by the rising sun. And as you draw near the lanterns, their shimmer steadies, as though acknowledging a witness at last. No sound accompanies them, only the faint sense of something waking, like the first page of a forgotten history turning under unseen hands. Whispers tell us that the people who once gathered these lanterns lived in a time before written memory, when the world was shaped by the slow dance of light and shadow. They carved their stories into stone, not as pictures, but as patterns, spirals, rising lines, tiny ridges that echoed the movement of dawn across the horizon. Archaeologists call them solar lines or horizon marks. But the truth is softer, more human. These early carvers believed that every dawn carried a breath, a living exhale from the sky. Their markings attempted to catch that breath, to tether it to earth, so that each sunrise would speak to them directly. In the ruins where these carvings remain, you can still trace the faint grooves with the edge of a fingertip. They feel like the fingerprints of someone long gone, like the residue of devotion pressed into stone. Among these carvings, fragments of the luminous lanterns have been found. Shards of translucent mineral, their surfaces smoothed by centuries of drifting sand. When held against light, they emit a faint, pearly glow, so soft you might mistake it for imagination. And yet, those who study them insist the glow is real, wordless, patient. Some shards carry markings, stars with curved tails, spirals wrapped around tiny circles, lines that suggest movement rather than shape. These symbols appear again and again in the carvings on the surrounding stones, as though the lanterns and the people who carve the walls belong to the same rhythm, the same breath. Beneath the silence of excavation sites, researchers have found lantern fragments beneath collapsed hearths, beneath sleeping platforms, beneath thresholds, as though the people wished the glow of dawnlight to follow them. Through fire, through sleep, through the gates of their homes. One fragment was found beside a skeletal hand, curled as if in mid-gesture. Some believe it was a guardian. Others think it was a traveler who sought to carry dawn with them into the unknown. But there is another explanation, whispered quietly, almost reluctantly, that the lanterns guided souls home after their final wandering. Beneath the silence of prehistory, the boundary between the living and the unseen was not a line, but a horizon. A gentle shift from shadow into glow. The earliest dawns were believed to be a bridge, a narrow doorway through which memory passed. And the lanterns, perhaps they were markers of this boundary. A lantern, placed outside a dwelling, was said to guide lost spirits back to warmth. A lantern, carried across the plain, was believed to reveal the path between worlds, lighting the thin veil where breath becomes wind and wind becomes memory. Some myths speak of a figure known only as the one who walks ahead of dawn, a gentle presence, neither feared nor worshipped, who carried the first lantern and placed it in the sky like a promise. From that lantern, they say, the sun learned its rhythm. Of course, history does not confirm such stories. It simply leaves quiet spaces where wonder may rest. And in those spaces, the lanterns glow softly, refusing to extinguish even after the centuries that buried them in dust. Where memory fades, the earth sometimes returns small gifts. Fragments, echoes, traces of stories thought to be lost. In several isolated plains across the world, archaeologists have unearthed unfamiliar stones that exhibit the same faint luminescence described in early myths. Most glow only when touched by light just before sunrise. Others gleam even in darkness, though only for a breath, like a heartbeat flickering beneath stone. Some of these fragments carry tiny scratches, too deliberate to be natural, too delicate to be utilitarian. They resemble the patterns found on cave walls, but the lines are softer, smoother, as though carved not with tools, but with some instrument meant to honor light itself. There is one shard, spoken of like a secret, a crescent-shaped piece, discovered in a barren field where no ruins stand. Its curve is perfect. Its surface holds the faint imprint of a spiral, so small it might be overlooked without care. But those who have seen it in person say that, for a moment, as dawn touches its edge, the spiral glows. Not brightly, but with a softness that feels intentional, as though it is guiding the eyes towards some unspoken truth. Perhaps it is coincidence. Perhaps it is longing that shapes interpretation. Or perhaps the earliest humans understood dawn not as a phenomenon, but as a presence, and shaped their lives around its breath. As night gathers again in the present, the ancient lanterns dim. Their glow retreats into memory, into the quiet spaces between breaths. It is easy to imagine them settling once more beneath layers of earth, waiting for hands yet unborn to find them. Some scholars insist that the glow is purely mineral, a trick of translucence, a coincidence of chemistry. And yet, there is a kind of silence around these artifacts that feels intentional, as though the earth itself is guarding something sacred. When one stands in the plains where lantern fragments have been discovered, the air feels different. Unhurried, listening, even the wind seems to pass more gently, as though mindful of what lies beneath the dust. Perhaps the lanterns never guided the living at all. Perhaps they guided memory. Perhaps they were placed where they were found not to illuminate a path outward, but to call wanderers back home, back to the first dawn, the first breath, the first trembling light that taught humankind to hope. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And so, as this chapter settles into its final quiet, you may imagine the lanterns slowly fading, their last glow drifting across the ancient plain like a sigh. The sky softens, the horizon rests, and beneath forgotten earth, where stones cradle centuries of silence, the earliest hope of humankind waits. Still warm, still gentle, still glowing. Not brightly, just enough to be remembered. The city, written in salt and moonlight, it is said that somewhere beyond the trembling edge of the known world, where the wind carries the flavor of forgotten oceans and the earth gleams with a pale unearthly dust, there once lay a city that did not belong entirely to night, nor wholly to day. A place whispered into existence by the tides, shaped by the breath of moons long set adrift, and claimed by the quiet patience of salt. Some call it a mirage. Some call it a memory. Others believe it is a story carved into the oldest bones of the world, an echo too soft for daylight, but clear enough to reach those who wander slowly and listen gently. Tonight, as the hush of evening folds around us, let us walk toward that city, not to find answers, but to drift closer to the place where mystery breathes. In a landscape where the horizon blurs into shimmering silver, a gate rises from the salt like a rib of a long-dead leviathan. Each pillar is etched with spirals, patterns faint yet deliberate, as if drawn by hands unafraid of time's erosion. The air is cool here, touched with the faint luminescence of distant moonlight, though the sun has not fully set. Before this gate lies a tethered path of crystallized dunes, pale as old parchment, glimmering like frost. No footprints mark it, no wind disturbs it. The silence is whole, unbroken, as though sound itself has forgotten how to walk this land. Some believe this gate was once the edge of the world, a threshold through which sailors of ancient nights embarked into the sky, guided by constellations that no longer exist. Others say it was merely the entrance to a city that lived on the harmony between tide and starlight. But perhaps the truth is simpler. The gate remains because something once loved it enough to carve their dreams into its stone. And so, as we step through, the world shifts. The ground dips softly. The moon, rising early, scatters its pale glow across the vastness. And there, shimmering at the edge of the perception, appears the faint outline of streets, written not in stone, but in salt, moonlight, and the memory of water. Whispers tell us that the city was never fully alive in the way other cities are. It breathed only when the moon ascended, and slept beneath the weight of the sun, its walls dissolving into drifting salt, its towers collapsing into glimmering dunes. In forgotten chronicles, it was called Selunari, though even that name seems borrowed from the language of tides. As we move forward, faint shapes resolve, low walls shimmering as though coated in frost, delicate arches sculpted from salt flakes hardened into fragile marble, and courtyards outlined in powdery white. The architecture is strangely oceanic. Domes like overturned shells, pillars reminiscent of coral spires, stairways flowing with the grace of a wave captured mid-rise. It is said the people who built this place did not fear impermanence. They welcomed it. They built their homes to melt, to drift, to be carried off grain by grain. They believe that what remains only for a breath becomes a sacred thing, a trace of truth too pure to grasp. Under the rising moon, the city brightens. Salt crystals refract the soft light into delicate halos, casting shimmering reflections across every surface. Streets that moments ago seemed empty now appear illuminated with ghostly patterns, as if markings made by ancient festivals are glowing awake. Quietly, with slow and reverent steps, we walk down a central avenue, one that scholars once thought to be a ceremonial path. Though no one can say for certain, the sands here hold a sense of direction, a quiet intention, as though thousands once walked this very line in nightly devotion. Along the avenue stand towering monoliths, carved with star marks. Not constellations we know, but spirals, stacked crescents, loops and orbits. Some believe these were calendars of a lunar people. Others think they mapped tides that have since vanished. But most agree the symbols point upward as much as inward, suggesting the inhabitants saw no divide between the sky and the soul. A soft breeze moves across the ruins. It carries a faint mineral scent, clean, ancient, resembling the breath of a distant sea. The salt around us responds with a soft hiss, like pages being turned in a book made not of parchment, but of moonlit dust. Here and there, we find remnants of objects, half buried in the pale ground. A small bowl carved into the shape of a crescent, its rim still faintly polished. What looks like a ceremonial staff, etched with wave-like grooves. A cluster of flattened stones, covered in patterns that seem almost script-like. These relics feel less like belongings and more like offering. Tokens left behind for the city itself. Beneath the silence, one might almost imagine soft voices, humming low notes, rising and falling like distant tides. As the moon climbs higher, the city clarifies further. Salt walls thicken into luminous silhouettes. Courtyards grow defined, their edges glowing faintly. We come upon a large circular plaza at the city's heart, outlined by low benches resembling bleached coral. At its center lies a basin, empty now, but shaped as though once filled with reflective water. Weppers tell us that in ages past, this basin held moonlight captured in liquid form. Of course, this is but a poetic phrase, metaphor perhaps, or myth. Yet standing here with the moon directly overhead, it feels no less true. The basin gleams, radiant and soft, giving the impression it still remembers the sacredness poured into it long ago. Some believe this plaza was a place of gathering, a nightly ritual of quietness. No loud celebrations, no flames. Only the moon, the salt, and the breath of those who lived here. A communion crafted from stillness, moving deeper into the city, the structures grow taller, more intricate. Arches stack upon arches, forming rib-like corridors with frayed patterns resembling veils. Each step we take echoes softly, cushioned by the shifting crystals underfoot. Here, the air grows cooler, wrapped in a faint blue glow. At the city's far edge, we discover what might have been a sanctuary. Its entrance is framed by two towering pillars, each crowned with circular carvings reminiscent of full moons layered atop waning crescents. The sanctuary itself is little more than an open hall, but the faint glimmering lines across its floor form a map. Spirals radiating from a central point, dotted with smaller circles, like a celestial chart or a memory diagram. Some scholars have argued that these floor patterns indicated seasonal ritual sites. Others believe they were diagrams of a spiritual journey or guidance for dream travel, a practice said to be common among moon-watching cultures. Yet the most enduring belief is more delicate, that this map was not of a place nor a sky, but of the soul, a representation of how light becomes memory and memory becomes dust. Here, everything feels suspended. Time, intention, even breath. It is as though the city was constructed for those who moved slowly, who understood that silence is a form of devotion. As we linger in the sanctuary, moonlight filters in through salt-veiled arches, drifting like silver smoke. The patterns on the ground respond with a muted glow, as though touched by their ancient purpose. And for a moment, just a moment, the city feels alive again. Yet even sacred cities cannot hold their shape forever. As the moon begins its slow descent, the edges of the structures soften. Arches blur into pale drift. Walls begin to collapse into gentle piles of crystals that shimmer as they settle. It is not destruction, it is return. The city is dissolving, grain by grain, as though folding itself back into the silence that birthed it. Some believe this nightly dissolution was once natural, expected. Others say it began only after the inhabitants vanished, perhaps carried away by the tide they once worshipped. Perhaps the people grew tired of choosing between a place that lived only under moonlight and the uncertainty of the waking world. Or perhaps they became the city. Threads of salt, breath of tide, shimmering memories under a patient moon. Where memory fades, the city becomes softer still. Towers sink, courtyards evaporate. The sanctuary map breaks apart into scattered spirals. But nothing feels tragic. Nothing feels lost. It is as though the city is simply exhaling. Perhaps it was never meant to be found in daylight. Perhaps it was always meant to be a place visited only in dreams, in whispers, in the gentle hours when the world loosens its grip and mystery is allowed to breathe. As the final structures return to salt, moonlight lingers, floating in thin, trembling threads across the pale landscape. For a moment, they resemble the faint sketch of streets, as if drawn by an invisible hand, and then even they fade. We find ourselves once again at the threshold of the gate, the same ancient pillars rising from the dust. Behind us, only dunes. Ahead, only silence. But something remains. Not a relic, nor an answer, but a softness, a sense that somewhere, just beyond the reach of waking thought, a city continues to breathe in salt and moonlight, waiting for those willing to walk slowly enough to hear it. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Tonight, as our sleep draws near, let the memory of that shimmering city drift with you, fragile as salt, gentle as moonlight, eternal as the silence that cradles the world. The Oracle. Beneath the sleeping forest. It is said that on the farthest edge of a forest where the trees seem to breathe in slow, velvety rhythms, there lies a path that most travelers overlook. A path so narrow that even moonlight seems hesitant to touch it. In forgotten seasons, hunters spoke of seeing it appear only when the world felt particularly still, as though the forest itself were deciding who was ready to step beyond its boundary. There, beneath a canopy that sways like the darkened hem of an ancient robe, the leaves whisper with a sound too soft to be mere wind. Some believe it is the forest speaking, exhaling memories older than dust. Others say it is only the rustle of wildlife hidden deep within. Yet in the quiet hours when night settles like a gentle weight upon the earth, those leaves brush together with the tender cadence of voices long forgotten. And just beyond that edge, where daylight dims into a muted hush, the path begins, wrapped in shadows that glide like soft veils over the soil. It wanders towards something that has been waiting for longer than any story remembers. For at the end of this winding trail stands a low stone arch, half swallowed by roots that twist in deliberate, patient spirals. It is a gate that seems not built but grown into place. Its stones bear faint carvings, smoothed by time, marked by the moon, and softened by the breath of countless seasons. The arch does not rise high enough for grandeur, nor does it gleam with invitation. Its power is quieter, deeper, the kind that asks nothing yet feels impossibly difficult to ignore. Whispers tell us that this arch once guarded the entrance to an underground oracle, a sanctuary older than any written myth, older perhaps than the forest itself. And here, in the opening of this story, beneath the listening boughs and the unhurried sky, we stand before that half-hidden threshold. If one were to close their eyes, they might sense a faint hum beneath the roots, as if the earth were remembering something. The air grows cooler, more deliberate. The forest holds its breath, and the world narrows into the small stone mouth beneath the archway. Beyond the arch, darkness drifts like a curtain gently lowering itself. Yet even here, beneath the soil and roots, a memory of rainfall, there is light. A dim, moss-bound glow pulses along the stone, guiding each step deeper. Some believe the moss was once cultivated by those who sought the oracle, nourished by rituals we no longer understand. As you descend the first steps, each one worn smooth by those who came in ages past, the forest's music fades into a soft, distant sigh. The world above becomes a forgotten dream, and the hush of the underground grows warm and close around you. The corridor opens into a chamber supported by rows of columns rising like trunks of a petrified grove. Each column is carved with constellations no longer visible in our sky. Their shapes twist in spirals, arcs, and branching lines that resemble both star maps and the delicate patterns found upon ancient shells washed ashore by seas that no longer exist. It is said that those who carved these columns did so in reverence to a sky that has shifted through cycles we cannot comprehend. Whispers tell us that once, the heavens themselves turned differently, and these symbols were the memory of a world aligned to a more patient rhythm. As you walk deeper, your footsteps echo softly, merging with the breath of the chamber. Here, beneath the silence, questions seem to form without words. Questions of time, of truth, of the soft place where myth and memory intertwine. Some believe the oracle once spoke with a voice, a sound that resonated not through the air but through the bones, through the pulse at one's wrist. Others believe it never spoke at all, that its gift was simply a reflection, a surface of stillness upon which seekers found their own answers. And there are a few who whisper that it offered neither prophecy nor wisdom, but rest. A place where weary souls could lean into silence and let themselves be held by something older than sorrow, older than hope. The dim moss guides you past alcoves that hold stone urns, cracked tablets and forgotten scrolls whose ink has faded into gentle shadows. Their meaning has drifted beyond reach, softened into curves and strokes that feel more like sighs than symbols. Somewhere in the chamber, water drips in a slow, unhurried heartbeat. Each drop lands with a quiet certainty, echoing through the stillness, like a reminder that even in places abandoned by time, life continues in small, patient gestures. Where memory fades, imagination steps forward. And in this vast subterranean hall, the air feels rich with the stories of those who once descended these same steps. Seekers, wanderers, lost ones, dreamers. Some arrived carrying heavy questions. Others carried only silence. But all stood here, beneath these star-carved pillars, hoping for something. Illumination, peace, a glimpse beyond the ordinary breath of existence. What the oracle offered them remains uncertain. No record speaks clearly. No inscription reveals its purpose. The truth has dissolved into the same soft darkness that cradles this chamber. But perhaps that is what keeps the oracle alive. Not knowledge, but the tender glow of possibility. Deeper still, the chamber narrows into a long, sweeping hall. Its walls curve like the inside of a vast, sleeping creature, and the air grows cooler, more reverent. The columns here are closer together, their carvings more intricate, as though the hands that shaped them held a deeper devotion. A faint shimmer lingers upon the floor, like dust made of moonlit breath. When touched, it leaves no mark, no weight. Only a sense of quiet recognition. Some say the oracle existed not to answer, but to remember. To hold the echoes of those who sought it. To gather their hopes, their fears, their whispered questions, and cradle them long after their voices faded. Others believe the oracle was a threshold, a place where the boundary between the seen and the unseen thinned until even the softest thought could slip into another world. In this hall, the silence feels shaped. Like a vessel carved from stillness itself, the air seems to listen. The walls seem to lean closer, as though waiting. And if you place your palm upon the cool stone, you may feel a faint vibration beneath the surface. A pulse, a memory. It is said that the last visitor, a figure whose name has dissolved into dust, once did just that. They pressed their hand to the stone and whispered a question so delicate, so fragile, that it vanished before reaching the air. Perhaps the oracle answered, perhaps it simply listened. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Eventually, the path curves back toward the surface, though the way feels gentler, as though the chamber itself is guiding you outward. The moss continues its dim glow, patient and soft, until at last a faint light appears. Not bright, not sharp, but warm. The forest awaits. Its branches hover like guardians. Its leaves murmur with the quiet rhythm of breath. The arch stands as it always has, half claimed by roots, marked by the moon, softened by time. As you emerge, the night seems different, as though you have stepped into a world that has forgotten something, or perhaps remembered something long ignored. The entrance behind you becomes smaller with each breath, as though the forest is folding itself over the threshold, reclaiming the secret once more. Roots stretch, soil shifts, shadows gather, all in slow, tender motion. Soon, the arch is little more than a suggestion, a ripple of stone beneath tangled green. And then, as the leaves sigh one final time, even that suggestion fades into the breathing darkness of the forest. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it reveals itself only to those traveling in softness, those whose hearts carry quiet rather than demand. In forgotten corners of the earth, there are truths that choose to sleep. Not lost, not broken, simply resting, waiting for the rare moment when someone walks slowly enough, gently enough to hear them breathe. And so the oracle remains beneath the sleeping forest, unchanged by the passing of centuries, a sanctuary of echoes, a cradle of unanswered questions, a place where silence holds its own kind of wisdom. And as the night deepens, as the trees lean close and the world becomes a soft veil of darkness, you carry with you the faint impression of that hidden chamber. Not a memory exactly, but something quieter, something that lingers in the space between breath and dream. Some truths choose to sleep forever, and some dreams awaken only when we close our eyes. The desert, where shadows kept their own kingdom, it is said that in certain corners of the world, far beyond the last known villages and the final markings on any trusted map, there are deserts that do not behave as deserts should, sands that shimmer even without light, horizons that sway even when the air is still, silences so deep they seem to ripple. And in one of these restless, quiet places, beneath a sky that once knew the footsteps of forgotten travelers, whispers speak of a kingdom built not of stone, but of shadow. They say it lies far across a quiet expanse of golden sand, where the horizon wavers like a sigh, a place where the earth inhales at twilight and exhales at dawn, a place where memory thins into myth, and myth folds into dream. Tonight, under the dim and gentle glow of a softening sky, we begin our journey there. Twilight comes slowly to the desert, as if it is uncertain of its own right to enter. The blue of the sky deepens. The sun descends with a kind of ceremonial reluctance. And the dunes, those ancient wind-carved guardians, stretch their shadows long across the sand. And this is where the story begins, with a single shadow elongating across a dune, then another, until the whole desert seems to shift and breathe, weaving silhouettes into forms that the daylight refuses to acknowledge. From a distance, in the last moments before the sun's descent finally opens the gates of night, the dunes arrange themselves into the faint likeness of a city. Towers rise where no stone has ever stood. Avenues form in the dips between the ridges. Arches curve from the meeting of dusk light and drifting sand. It is said that this is the threshold, the moment when the kingdom of shadows makes itself known, not through brick or mortar, but through darkness leaning against the fading day. Some travelers once claimed that if you stood still enough, quiet enough, humble enough. You could watch these silhouettes assemble into an entire world. A vanished empire reborn each night from its own absence. A city that was never built, only remembered. And so, the desert opens like a doorway, inviting us into a story that has no beginning and no end. Only the hush of a place that keeps its own counsel. Long before the sands swallowed their own secrets, there were scrolls. Pale, brittle, etched with pigment the color of dried pomegranates. Scrolls that spoke gently of a civilization that believed every person carried a twin made not of flesh, but of evening light. A shadow self, a companion shaped by moonrise, a double that lived in silence, but remembered every breath, every step, every sorrow with a devotion deeper than flesh could hold. According to these fragmentary writings, the people of that lost civilization believed that when someone died, their shadow did not vanish. Instead, the shadow simply slipped away, quietly, respectfully, and made its long walk home. Home. To a kingdom hidden not underground, nor across an ocean, but woven into the twilight itself. Whispers tell us that during certain rare nights, perhaps once a decade, perhaps once a century, perhaps only when the desert decides, these shadow selves return to the surface, not as ghosts, not as illusions, but as shapes woven from the very absence of light. And on such nights, the desert becomes their city. Beneath the silence, avenues unfurl like long-forgotten memories. Where memory fades, arches made of darkness stand as firm as stone. Marked by the moon, towers rise from the shifting dunes, not quite seen yet unmistakably present. Scholars who attempted to decode the surviving fragments said the language used was different from other desert scripts. Softer, more circular, each line spiraling inward like a pathway meant to be retraced in silence. A language that behaved like water collapsing gently into itself. Perhaps it is fitting, then, that the kingdom it described was one that refused solidity. A place built not from permanence, but from remembrance. And so we find ourselves walking deeper into the cool mystery of night. The heat of the day has lifted. The wind has softened into a sigh. Behind us, the sun has surrendered completely. Ahead of us, the moon has taken its watch. The desert stretches in every direction, vast and pale, as though the sands themselves are waiting for something. Then, as if answering an unspoken invitation, faint footprints begin to appear. Not pressed into the sand by weight, but shaped by absence. Small depressions carved by nothingness. They appear one by one, leading onward in a fragile, wavering path. Whispers tell us that these footprints belong to the shadow selves. They appear only after dusk, visible only when the moon rises high and the desert grows still enough to remember. We follow them, not to chase, not to claim, but to observe, to sink gently into the rhythm of a story older than our world can measure. Each step draws us closer to where the dunes curve softly into an expanse so wide that even the air seems reluctant to cross it. And at the center of that quiet bowl of sand, the shadows thicken. Not frightening, not urgent, simply present. They gather like a congregation, as if remembering the shape of an ancient marketplace. They flow like water into patterns, forming the outline of a temple that once caught starlight in its highest spires. They rise and fall like pulses, like breathing, For a moment, a brief, tremulous moment, we can almost see it. A city of darkness mirroring the empire that once breathed atop these very sands. A capital of silhouettes, built nightly from memory. A kingdom that glows not with light, but with the certainty of what once was. The dunes serve as foundations, the moon as architect, silence as mortar. No sound breaks the air, but the subtle shifting of grains beneath the faint wind. And yet, in the quiet, there is a sense of presence, as though thousands of lives once lived are now drifting past us in shape alone. Some say that the Shadow King still walks there, a figure dissolving at the edges, crowned not by gold, but by the cool halo of twilight. Others claim that the kingdom itself is the king, and the shadows its breath. All we truly know is this: something is here, something ancient, something that remembers. As the night deepens, the shapes become clearer, then softer, then clearer again, as though the city is adjusting to its own fleeting nature. The dunes tremble the way old memories do, trying to hold themselves together. Yet the desert is patient. It knows that dawn is approaching. It knows the shadows will soon retreat. A pale light begins to spread along the horizon, a quiet announcement that the day is preparing to return. The moon, having kept its vigil, now loosens its hold. The shadows shiver, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. They have done this for thousands of nights. They will do it for thousands more. One by one, the towers of darkness fade. The avenues recede. The gates dissolve back into drifting grains. The city returns to silence, retreating not beneath the sand, but into the spaces between light and memory. Until once more the desert holds nothing but soft ripples of gold and the whisper of places unseen. When the first true breath of morning touches the dunes, the last shadow slips away, leaving no mark, no ruin, no sign of what has been in. Only the wind-blown sand remains, stretching in every direction like a page left intentionally blank. And yet, if you listen closely, if your heart is quiet enough, you may still sense them. The silhouettes returning to the realm that waits just beyond the reach of sight. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was meant only to remind us that even shadows have origins, that every darkness we cast carries memory, and every memory longs for home. As the dawn finally breaks across the endless desert, warming the sand, brightening the sky, and softening the cool breath of night, a final thought settles upon us like evening dust. Perhaps every shadow is a memory searching for its origin. And perhaps the kingdom it seeks still waits, patiently, in the quiet between one heartbeat and the next. The river that remembered every footstep. It is said that in a quiet corner of the ancient world, far from the noise of caravans and far beyond the reach of the old mountain roads, there flowed a river that did not simply move through the landscape, but listened to it. A narrow waterway, silvered by mist and shaped over ages by the slow patience of the earth, bent gently through a valley of sleeping reeds and moss-darkened stones. At dusk, when the sky softened into a wash of faded copper and dusk blue, its surface lay still as polished glass. The wind did not dare disturb it. Even the birds kept their wings tucked close, as if honoring some unseen ceremony unfolding in the air. Whispers tell us that this river had once been a boundary, not between nations but between realms of memory. Beneath its silence lived the faint echoes of footsteps, voices, and forgotten songs. Old travelers believed that the river heard every life that ever crossed it, and that in its depths, the impressions of those moments remained, folded into the currents like curled pages of an unwritten book. Some claimed this place had no true beginning. Others said it was born from the first rainfall that ever touched the earth. But beneath these stories, beneath the myths that rose and fell like reeds in the seasonal winds, one truth held steady. This was a river that remembered, and tonight, in the early evening light, it invites us to follow. We begin where the path narrows, where a ribbon of earth winds alongside the water's edge. The air is cool, touched by the breath of the arriving night. Mist clings to the ground like a living veil, swirling around our ankles, rising just enough to blur the world into softness. There is no rush here, no urgency, only the steady rhythm of the river moving beside us. Quiet, unhurried, as though carrying an ancient secret across the centuries. It is said that those who walked this path long ago could hear faint murmurs beneath the surface. Not voices exactly, but impressions. The weight of a footstep, the hush of fabric brushing stone, the barely audible hum of a lullaby sung generations earlier. Some swore that if one listened closely enough, the water would speak in memory itself, whispering truths too fragile to survive the open air. The river bends once, twice, then unfurls into a straight, solemn corridor of water. Along its bank rise shrines built from smooth, water-worn stones. They are stacked with patient precision, as though shaped by hands that sought no recognition, only reverence. The stones bear carvings, spirals, concentric rings, and symbols shaped like expanding ripples, as though they were inscriptions of remembered moments echoing outward through time. Perhaps they were. Perhaps each spiral was a life, a journey, or a single sacred breath captured by the river and turned into stone. Beneath the silence, the water glimmers, as though approving the thought. Further along, we pass a shrine sunken halfway into the soil. Moss covers much of its face, but the carvings still shine through, faintly marked by the moon's early rise. One symbol in particular draws the eye, a crescent shape, surrounded by delicate lines like the phases of a memory, waxing and waning. Marked by the moon, the old one said, the river never forgot. Some believe these shrines were not meant to worship gods, but to honor the lives that had touched the river's edge. The shrines were said to glow faintly under certain nights, as though reawakening the memories stored within them. Travelers would linger at these places, leaving offerings, a feather, a handful of grain, a piece of worn cloth, not as a plea for favor, but as a promise that they too wish to be remembered. As we continue, the path widens, opening into a clearing framed by leaning trees whose roots drink deeply from the river's slow tide. Their branches arch overhead like the ribs of a sacred hall. The sky is dimming now. A soft blue fades into deeper shadows, the horizon painted with a clay-red echo of the day. Still, the air remains gentle, filled with a quiet warmth from the earth. Beneath this natural archway, we hear a soft sound, the faintest ripple. It is not caused by wind or stone. It has the rhythm of something older, something deliberate, Perhaps it is the memory of someone who once crossed the river in silence. Perhaps it is a story that still lingers, waiting for a listener. The myths of this place were many, each layered over the next, like silt deposited by the moving tide. Some said the river was a guardian, watching over the passage between worlds. Others insisted it was a messenger, ferrying the unspoken desires of humanity to the unseen depths below. A few whispered that the river itself had once been alive, not as water, but as a being of light who chose to carry the past rather than abandon it. Whatever the truth, one belief remained constant. The river possessed patience beyond understanding. It would wait centuries for a footstep. It would remember a forgotten name with the tenderness of a prayer. We walk farther now, following the gentle curve of the water. Along the bank, the land becomes more uneven, dotted with smooth stones, worn by countless years of rising and falling tides. Between them, small pools of water gather, catching reflections of the grey-blue sky above. They shimmer in subtle patterns, as though each pool holds a fragment of the river's memory. In forgotten corners of the valley, one can still find remnants of rituals once performed here. Circles carved into the soil mark the places where travelers stood before crossing, whispering their names into the mist so the river would remember them kindly. Some left handprints of clay-red pigment on stones. Others drew spirals with their fingertips dipped in river water. These simple gestures were believed to bind a person's memory to the land, ensuring they would never vanish entirely. And as we walk, we sense that these old customs have not truly disappeared. The land still hums with them, faintly but undeniably, like a lullaby carried across generations. The river slows here, widening into a basin where the water darkens. Beneath its surface, shapes shift softly in the dim light. They are not threatening, nor distinct. They feel like shadows of footsteps lingering long after the traveler has moved on. Perhaps the river is replaying a memory for itself, just to ensure it never loses its place. Beneath the silence, the world grows softer still. The reeds along the bank murmur lightly. The mist thickens, swirling in languid curls. There is a sense of being on the edge of something sacred. A threshold where the present pauses and the past exhales. Where memory fades, the river continues. We turn a final bend, and the light changes. The moon has risen, large and pale, casting a silver wash across the water. Every ripple glows faintly, as though illuminated from within. The shrines now flicker in and out of the mist, transformed into silhouettes of devotion. In this moonlit stillness, it becomes easy to believe the ancient stories. One can imagine footsteps appearing on the water's surface, or hear a murmur rising from its depths. A soft echo touches the air, the suggestion of a voice, or perhaps the river itself breathing. Some say that if you stand long enough beside this water, your own memories begin to drift outward, mingling with those already held by the river. Not stolen, not diminished, simply shared, as though offering a small piece of your life to the vast tapestry of time. And in that sharing, something awakens within you. A quiet reverence, a tender knowing that the world is not as empty as it sometimes seems. That somewhere, in places like this, the past is not lost, but gently stored, waiting for someone to pass by, listen, and remember. The final stretch of the river narrows again, drawing itself into a quiet thread of silver beneath the moon. It moves slowly, with the calm certainty of something that has carried countless lifetimes and will carry countless more. It slips between reeds. It vanishes behind a curtain of fog. It leaves no story concluded, no truth revealed. It simply continues its journey, carrying its unspoken recollections deeper into the night. And as it recedes, one question lingers. Soft as breath, ancient as the earth. Do we move through the world? Or does the world remember us? Perhaps it was never meant to be answered. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and the river, patient as ever, flows on. The temple that counted the heartbeats of stars, it is said that somewhere beyond the familiar edges of the world, far above the plains where human footsteps fade into the whisper of the wind, there lies a mountain so old its name has turned to silence. Travelers who once tried to mark it on their maps found their ink thinning, their lines drifting like smoke. Perhaps the mountain prefers anonymity. Perhaps it stands too close to the sky to be claimed. On its summit, veiled by frost and the soft drifting breath of clouds, there once rose a sanctuary shaped not for people, but for the heavens themselves. Its stones were carved in patient devotion, each block placed as if in conversation with the constellations. At twilight, when the horizon still carried a trace of bronze and fading warmth, the temple would appear only as a faint outline, pillars leaning, rooftops dissolving into night, like a memory deciding whether to return or remain forgotten. Beneath the silence of that vast expanse, the wind carried stories. Whispers tell us that the temple's builders were not kings, nor warriors, nor any people who sought to leave their names etched into time. They were listeners. They believed the cosmos breathed, that every star pulsed with a heartbeat too slow, too ancient, too gentle for ordinary ears to hear. And so they came to this high place, to listen not to answers, but to infinities. Some nights, or so the legends drift, the astronomer priests would sit in rows along the outer terraces. Wrapped in furs that rustled like drifting snow, they watched the firmament for hours. They waited for the subtle trembling of a star's light, the faintest quiver that revealed its living rhythm. When such a moment arrived, a soft pulse, a shimmer, a sigh, they carved its pattern into tablets of stone. These tablets, broken now, lie scattered in the moss-coated dust. Their edges have softened with time. Their symbols have faded into half-echoes. If one were to brush away the frost and hold a flame close, they might glimpse spirals, curves, and star-shaped markings. The calligraphy of a forgotten sky. As the night deepens in our imagining, let us walk gently through the remnants of this place, step by step, as though crossing a threshold into dream space. We enter the first hall. The air inside is cool, touched with a faint scent of stone that has witnessed centuries of breath and silence. Here, shadows gather not with menace, but with reverence. The walls are carved with thin lines, like the soft etchings of a fingertip across wet sand. These lines once charted the rising and setting of celestial bodies. Now they drift into abstraction. At the center of the hall stands a narrow doorway, framing the distant night. Beyond it, the sky pours down like ink. Through this small aperture, the ancient watchers observed a single star, one that no longer appears in the heavens today. Some believe it collapsed. Others say it only turned its face away. And there are those who whisper that stars, like memories, sometimes withdraw when too many eyes forget how to see them. We move onward. A corridor stretches ahead, its floor uneven, broken by cold roots and flecks of fallen granite. The ceiling glimmers faintly with embedded quartz, like a field of trapped frost, catching the torchlight of ages long gone. One might imagine the astronomer priests walking here in soft procession, carrying bowls of coal and ember, their movements creating brief constellations in the flickering glow. Deeper still lies the courtyard, a place where moonlight once flowed like a water, pooling across the tiles in gentle currents. Even now, if one pauses, there is the sense of a quiet breath lingering, something ancient exhaling in the stillness. When the moon stood at its highest, the courtyard became a mirror, reflecting the night directly downward. The priests believed that in this place, earth and sky met, just for a heartbeat. Some say the courtyard was built not in tribute to the moon, but in conversation with it. Each tile is etched with subtle crescents, layered one upon another, creating an impression of movement, like lunar phases unfolding in stone. Moss creeps through the grooves now, softening the shapes, adding a hush to their forgotten rhythm. We drift further inward, drawn as though by a quiet pulse. The inner sanctum waits, a circular chamber carved directly in stone to the mountain's granite spine. The walls slope gently inward, as if leaning toward the center where a single stone basin rests. Thin as a petal and smooth as polished river rock, the basin once held water collected from storms, water that the priests believed carried the breath of distant galaxies. In that reflection, they sought not prophecy, but alignment. A still surface, holding the shimmer of countless stars, offering the illusion that heaven had lowered itself into a bowl. Some witnesses, rare travelers, who claimed to have glimpsed the basin before it dried, swore that the water did not reflect the sky above at all, but some other sky entirely, one with constellations unknown, one with a slow rhythmic flicker, like the beat of a cosmic heart. It is here that myth begins to merge with something softer, more elusive. Some legends say the basin once trembled when a star faded, that the stone itself resonated faintly, like the breath of a distant tide. Others speak of nights when the walls hummed with unseen frequency, a low vibration heard only in a dreams. But most agree on one thing. This sanctum was not built to worship the stars, but to listen to them. Where memory fades and silence strengthens, we wander into another chamber. This one open to the sky, its roof long collapsed, its pillars leaning toward each other like old friends sharing their final secrets. Through these broken ribs of stone, the night pours in freely. A thin breeze moves across the space, stirring motes of dust that sparkle like faint constellations. Perhaps, long ago, this was the temple's heart, a place where the watchers gathered to mark the celestial rhythms they could not yet understand. The floor is etched with spirals, a symbol of breath, of cycles, of beginnings, folding back into endings. These spirals lead outward, toward the edge of the chamber, as if inviting one to step past stone and into starlight. Some believe the spirals once glowed faintly at night. Others claim they felt warm beneath bare feet, pulsing with a heartbeat not their own. But such tales are gentle myths, drifting like smoke through the corridors of time. We pause at the threshold. The wind curls around the broken columns, carrying the faintest suggestion of a hum, a memory of sound rather than sound itself. Somewhere far above, star flickers, or perhaps it only winks. In this moment, The line between what once was and what we only imagine softens, blurring into a quiet truth. That every place touched by devotion holds some echo of it, even long after the voices have faded. The night grows deeper. Let us return to the outer terrace, the very place where the astronomer priests once kept vigil. Here, the horizon stretches in all directions, a dark ocean of space and time. Frost gathers along the stone railing, catching faint starlight in its crystalline lace. The cold air feels gentle, as though shaped by ancient hands. From this vantage, the sky seems impossibly vast. Stars shimmer in slow pulses, too faint to measure, too steady to deny. One might almost believe the old stories, that the stars breathe, that they listen, that they feel. Perhaps the priests did not count the stars' rhythms because they hoped to control fate, but because they yearned to understand their place in a universe that felt alive. Perhaps they looked upward, not out of curiosity, but companionship. And perhaps, if one stands quietly enough, long enough, the sky may still reveal a faint, slow beat, a rhythm gentle as distant footsteps, a pulse like the turning of a great wheel. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. In the final moments of our wandering, the temple begins to fade, not vanishing, but receding into the soft edges of the mind's night. The broken pillars dissolve into starlight. The courtyards melt into shadow. The basin becomes a glimmer, then a memory, then a breath. It is said the temple still stands on that high mountain, waiting with patient stillness. And on certain nights, when the wind moves just right, it hums with a rhythm older than time. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it waits only to be remembered. And as the night deepens around us, we drift with the temple into silence. Carried by the quiet, steady heartbeat of stars, we have almost forgotten how to hear it. The library carved from the breath of winter. It is said that in a remote valley where the world grew quiet, where the trees bowed under the weight of unbroken frost, and the sky held its breath as though listening for a forgotten name, there stood a library sculpted from winter itself. Not built, not carved by mortal hands, but coaxed from the chill, as though the season wished to leave behind a memory of its own making. Those who wandered far enough, past frozen rivers that whispered like thin glass chimes, past ridges whitened by ancient storms, spoke of a light that shimmered faintly at dusk. A soft, blue glow blooming where no sunbeam reached. And within this glow, rising like a dream half remembered, stood the library of the breath of winter. At first sight, the library appeared less like a structure and more like the delicate ribcage of some celestial beast fallen gently into the valley long ago. Walls of pale, translucent blue rose in elegant arcs, their surfaces etched with lines so fine they resembled drifting snow captured mid-fall. The crystalline chambers glowed from within, not brightly, not boldly, but with the tender hush of moonlight on an untouched field. Whispers tell us the walls thrummed with a soft resonance, as though they remembered the winds that shaped them. Visitors often claimed they could hear faint sighs in the ice. Voices, or memories, or perhaps simply frost speaking in its oldest tongue. Beneath the silence, down corridors so narrow they resembled icicle-lined veins, lay rooms that shifted with the seasons. When winter deepened, new alcoves formed like petals blooming, and when the thaw came, they retreated back into the snow, leaving only faint depressions in the frozen earth where wisdom once slept. This was the library's first mystery, that it lived, and like all living things, it breathed. Inside, the air felt impossibly still, yet alive with cold that shimmered like stardust suspended midair. Some travelers swore they saw tiny motes, like frozen breaths of ancient scholars, drifting in slow spirals as though reluctant to rest. Along the winding halls, thin sheets of ice rested in sculpted niches, each carved with delicate characters so faint they seemed ready to vanish at even the softest whisper. These were the scrolls of frost. The heart of the library. They were said to hold stories too fragile for ink, truths too fleeting for any parchment to cradle. The keepers of the valley believed winter was not a season but a spirit, a guardian who wrapped precious knowledge in cold so it would not burn away beneath the noise of the world. And so the library held scrolls etched with frostbite patterns, spiral symbols like storms unraveling, star-marked diagrams mapping constellations long since swallowed by cosmic drift. Some scrolls contained stories of ages before language. Some held the names of forgotten rivers. Others bore only a single symbol, a teardrop, a crescent moon, a broken spiral. Meanings lost to time. Those who read them claimed the knowledge did not enter the mind but settled somewhere deeper, like a snowflake landing on the chest and dissolving into warmth. But the library carried a paradox deeper still. For every scroll, every frost-carved whisper, melted with the first thaw. Each spring, the valley warmed just enough that the meaning held in each crystalline sheet returned to water and slipped into the soil. Some believed these truths were meant to be temporary, gentle teachings for the season that received them. Others believed it reflected the nature of wisdom itself, never permanent, never fixed, forever shifting as the world breathed. The valley's elders taught that memory is a kind of winter, preserving what cannot withstand the heat of living, and forgetting the melt that follows. They saw beauty in this rhythm, though it held sorrow too. For how could knowledge endure if it was destined to disappear? Yet beneath the sorrow lay something softer, like light beneath ice. Perhaps, the elders would murmur, some truths are meant only to be touched, never held. As we wander deeper into this shifting sanctuary, the chambers around us subtly change. Arches narrowing like the closing of an eyelid, ceilings widening into vast domes where faint constellations shimmer in frozen relief. One room is shaped like a spiraled shell, its curves echoing the quiet hum of winter's breath moving through it. Here, the scrolls tell stories of oceanic empires that drifted beneath the ice sheets of ancient worlds. Another glows with a soft emerald tint. Trace minerals caught within the frost. Its carvings speak of forests that grew under pale moons, their roots drinking from waters colder than memory. And then there is the chamber marked by a broken circle, a symbol carved so deeply that it cuts into the heart of the ice. Whispers say, this room held a truth too heavy to survive even a single thaw. No scholar ever reached it in time. The winter of its birth melted into spring before the first traveler arrived. Some say the room held the name of a god who once walked the wind. Others believe it carried the memory of a person so loved, so grieved, that winter carved their story just long enough for the snow to weep it away. We cannot know. We can only imagine what wisdom feels like when it chooses to live only for a breath. Many centuries ago, the valley was visited by travelers who wished to preserve the library, to build walls of stone around it, to trap winter's breath behind iron gates. But the keepers refused. Knowledge that cannot move is knowledge that cannot breathe, they said. They believed that winter, with all its cold and quiet grace, was the only guardian worthy of fragile truths. Truths that would crumble under greed or ambition, or the desire to possess rather than understand. Winter, after all, asks nothing. It simply arrives, stays for the span of its season, and then recedes into memory. In this way, the keepers saw a lesson carved deeper than any scroll. To know something only for a moment does not diminish its worth. Sometimes, the most sacred wisdom is the kind that refuses to be held forever. Eventually, as all things must, the library reached its last winter. Some say the valley warmed because the mountains grew tired. Others claim a great fire burned in a distant land, unseen but felt all the same. And some whisper that the winter spirit simply chose another place to rest. Whatever the reason, the thaw came early that year. The arches sagged like tired wings. Scrolls dissolved into droplets that beaded along the shelves before slipping silently to the floor. Walls turned translucent, then transparent, then gone. The chambers that once shifted with the breath of the season exhaled for the final time and surrendered themselves to the soft earth beneath. By dusk, where once stood crystalline corridors alive with shimmering light, there remained only a quiet stream trickling through the valley. Its waters carried a faint glow, the last memory of winter's wisdom drifting gently toward the horizon. And those who stood witness felt neither loss nor despair, only a hush, as though they'd been present at the closing of a sacred book. Tonight, as you listen, imagine standing at the edge of that valley. Cold air brushing your skin, the fading remnants of the library flecking a twilight sky. Imagine the stories you never read, the symbols you never learned, the truths that melted before your eyes could reach them. And yet, feel how they linger, not in words, not in memory, but in a quiet understanding that beneath the surface of all things, beneath our own seasons of holding and releasing, there lies a rhythm old as frost. Perhaps wisdom is not meant to be kept. Perhaps it is meant to be touched, felt, and then allowed to drift away like snow melting on an outstretched hand. For some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And some truths are meant only to pass through us, leaving behind a softness we cannot explain. So let the library melt. Let the valley breathe. Let winter carry its secrets to wherever the wind may lead. And as the night deepens and your mind drifts towards sleep, hold this one thought gently. Some truths are so delicate that they can only exist in the moment before they fade. The garden where stone learned to bloom, it is said that in forgotten corners of the earth, where the winds speak in sighs, and the mountains remember more than any living witness, there lies a garden built not of soil and leaf, but of stone and silence. Some call it a myth, a whispered echo from an age when the world was still half dream and half awakening. Others believe it was real, a sanctuary where the earth itself practiced a quiet form of alchemy, turning cold rock into luminous petals beneath the gaze of an ancient moon. Tonight, we walk together toward that place, slowly, as though crossing a threshold between waking and the softer realm that waits just beyond it. The chapter begins at dusk, in a valley carved gently into the shoulder of a sleeping hillside. The last light of day is a fading ember on the horizon, casting a muted glow over terraces shaped like the rings of a forgotten amphitheater. They rise one above the other, curved and patient, each step holding clusters of pale, smooth stones resting in shallow beds of dust. They resemble seeds, but seeds made of quiet moonlight, rather than anything that might sprout in soil. If one listens closely, perhaps in that suspended breath between sunset and nightfall, a faint hush seems to gather around the stones, as if the valley is drawing in a slow, deliberate breath. Ancient travelers wrote of this place in fragments, half-burnt scrolls, chipped tablets, margins of journals quarried across muddy borders by wandering monks. They spoke of a garden where ordinary stones would blossom once in a century, the petals unfurling like crystalline wings touched by frost. These were not flowers in any botanist's ledger. They were said to shine with a pale inner light, like moon shards softened into form. The stories were often dismissed as superstition, and yet none could explain the carvings still found along the terrace walls. Spiraling motifs of stars, shapes of flowers with gemstone hearts, and a people kneeling in reverence, hands cupped as though receiving something fragile from the earth. As the dusk deepens, we step into the garden's quiet threshold. The air is cool, tinged with the mineral scent of stone recently kissed by twilight. Beneath the silence lies a kind of expectancy, as though the garden remembers its ancient ceremonies, even if centuries have passed without a single bloom. Whispers tell us that the people who built this sanctuary believed the stones held the memories of their ancestors, not in the literal sense. No spirits trapped within, no haunting voices, but as echoes, impressions carried through generations. Each stone was shaped by hands now long returned to dust, and in that shaping, something of those lives remained. In forgotten ages, when the rare lunar alignment approached, the same pattern of stars that once guided their migrations across seas and deserts, the people would gather in the terraces, waiting for the night the garden would awaken. They sang softly, so their voices would not startle the delicate magic they believed slept beneath the stones. Tonight, no song rises, only our quiet footsteps moving between the terraces, careful not to disturb the stillness. The stones lie dormant, smooth and faintly luminescent, as though the moon has been speaking to them for centuries and they have been listening patiently. Some are cracked, like eggs that never opened. Others are whole, perfect ovals, cool to the touch, veined subtly with lines that resemble the branching of frost on a winter window. The terraces stretch outward in gentle arcs, forming a pattern that seems too deliberate to be mere architecture. A spiral, slowly unfurling from the heart of the garden outward into the hillside. Perhaps it is symbolic of growth, slow, inevitable, eternal. Or perhaps it is meant to echo the path of the moon as it traces its own intricate dance across the sky. As we walk, the hush deepens. Something about this place encourages slowness, not merely in the body, but in the thoughts themselves. Even the mind seems to breathe differently here, as though the garden asks for reverence without speaking a word. On the upper terraces, faint carvings etched into stone walls come into view. Their edges are worn by centuries of wind, but the imagery remains. Petals unfolding, starlight descending in thin beams. and figures raising their arms not to worship, but to cradle. The people who tended this garden did not kneel before their miracles. They received them, as one might receive a story from an elder or a blessing from the sea. We linger before a panel carved more deeply than the rest. It depicts a single blossom, its petals slender, translucent, radiating from a core that appears to pulse with an inner glow. Around it, smaller stones rest like unopened buds, suggesting that each bloom was precious beyond measure. Scholars have long debated the meaning of these carvings. Some proposed that the blossoms were metaphors for enlightenment, or symbols of an ancient ritual cycle. Yet the consistency of the imagery across different sites, some separated by vast distances, suggests that the people genuinely witnessed something they could not explain through words alone. Perhaps, beneath the layers of myth, a small truth waits. Not one that must be proven or disproven, but one that simply asks to be contemplated. We move deeper into the terraces, toward the heart of the garden. The stones here are arranged in circular beds, like cosmic mandalas carved from the earth. Each stone is placed with careful intention. No randomness, no haste. The placement is so precise that a soft harmony seems to rise from their arrangement, as though the garden itself holds a memory of music. Some stones bear faint markings, thin crystalline veins that catch the moon's first gentle touch. They shimmer briefly, then settle back into stillness. Whether this is the beginning of a bloom or simply the reflection of silvered light, we cannot say. But the moment feels fragile, like the flutter of a wing in the dark. As we approach the inner circle, the air grows cooler. The wind shifts, brushing the terraces with a gentle exhale. For a heartbeat, it feels as though something beneath the stone stirs. A presence, or perhaps a memory, reaching toward the surface. Legends say that when the stones bloomed, the sound was almost inaudible, a soft, crystalline breath, the quiet release of petals long held within. The people would bow their heads not out of fear, but out of awe, listening as their ancestors' memories drifted upward, shimmering like frost in moonlight. Tonight, there is no such sound, only the echo of the stories carried by the wind. We reach the heart of the garden, a circular platform carved from pale stone, its surface etched with spirals that radiate outward like ripples on water. This is the place where the first blossom was said to unfurl, long before the garden was built. Some believe the bloom was a celestial event, a fallen star that touched the earth and softened into crystal. Others say it was the earth itself dreaming. Standing at the center, the valley stretches around us in gentle tiers, each terrace cradling its patient stones. The night sky above is clear, scattered with quiet stars that seem to watch from a respectful distance. The moon hangs low, veiled by a thin haze, softening its glow into something tender and diffuse. We wait there for a moment, breathing with the valley. Perhaps it is foolish to hope for a bloom tonight. The ancient alignments have passed, the rituals long faded. Time has drifted like sand across the terraces, burying some stones, eroding others. Yet still, the garden remains, not abandoned, but resting. A thought rises softly. Some wonders do not vanish. They simply withdraw into silence, waiting for the world to grow quiet enough to hear them again. The moonlight pools gently around the stones, brushing their surfaces with silver. For a moment, one seems to glimmer, a subtle pulse, like the heartbeat of something just beneath the surface. But when we blink, it is only stone again, smooth, cool, patient. Perhaps it was never meant to bloom for us. Perhaps these blossoms existed only for those who believed without needing sight. Those who understood that mystery is not something to be solved, but something to be witnessed. A breeze stirs the dust, lifting faint spirals into the air. They drift for a moment, then settle softly back down, like petals of a flower that never opened. We step back from the center, offering the garden one last quiet glance. Nothing moves. Nothing glows. The stones lie peacefully, unaware of the centuries of longing woven around them. And yet, there is an undeniable tenderness in their stillness, as though each stone carries a fragment of an old lullaby, one the earth once sang to itself when the world was young. As the night deepens, the valley returns to its soft hush. The terraces fade into gentle shadow. The moonlight thins like a sigh. And in that fading quiet, something almost like an echo rises. Not a sound, but a sense. A whisper of what once was, or what might be again. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. The garden breathes in silence, holding its secret close, and we walk slowly back into the night, carrying the wonder with us, not as truth, not as certainty, but as a dream that lingers on the threshold of sleep. The choir, hidden beneath the tides of time. It is said that somewhere along a rugged coastline, where cliffs lean into the wind, like elders listening for the past, there lies a secret that the ocean has carried for longer than memory allows. A secret that drifts between stone and surf, humming in tones too ancient for language, too soft for daylight, too patient for any single lifetime. On certain evenings, when the moon slides low and pale across the water, the waves seem to breathe differently. Their rhythm deepens. Their sound grows rounder, warmer, almost melodic. Whispers tell us this is the moment when the hidden places beneath the earth stir, shifting ever so slightly, as though some unseen chamber is exhaling after centuries of stillness. And beneath those waters, beneath the hush, beneath the silence, beneath the slow-turning tides of time, an underwater cavern waits. Shaped by stone, shaped by water, shaped by the forgotten hands of those who once walked this shore. It is not marked on any map. It is not known to fishermen. Yet its presence lingers, like a faint vibration beneath the world. A pulse too subtle to name. Some believe the cavern is older than the sea that covers it. Others say the sea was always its guardian, its veil, its keeper of secrets. But all stories agree on one thing, that deep under the waves lies the remnant of an acoustic sanctuary, a place where stone once carried voice the way the sky carries stars. Perhaps you can imagine it. A chamber carved by centuries of water and wind. Pillars rising from the ocean floor like ribs of a sleeping giant. Salt-softened walls shimmering in pale blue light. Every surface curved, rounded, smoothed by time until it became part instrument, part cathedral. Here, Gear, echoes live long after their makers vanish. Here, sound moves, the one breath moves through the unseen spaces between thoughts. It is said that once, long before the tides grew wild, a coastal people found this place. They were quiet folk, marked by the moon, shaped by the sea, living in a world where myth and breath were the same. They believed that the ocean itself carried messages, tidal letters from realms beyond the horizon, written not in ink but in vibration. And so they built pillars within the cavern, pillars shaped not for strength but for resonance. Long salt-worn columns carved with spirals, rings etched with star symbols, grooves that shimmered when touched by torchlight. Some say these spirals represented the circular nature of existence. Others say they were maps of celestial currents known only to the oldest watchers of the sky. And some, in the quietest versions of the legend, whisper that these carvings were invitations, doors for wandering spirits, thresholds for voices waiting to return. Whatever their meaning, the pillars became the heart of a sanctuary unlike any other. At low tide, when the sea pulled away as though offering a single fleeting breath of peace, the coastal people would gather. They came barefoot, carrying lanterns that flickered like captive stars. They stepped carefully into the cavern, aware that they were entering a place where the world becomes thinner, where the boundary between the known and the forgotten shifts like a curtain of mist. And there, in that hollow beneath the earth, they formed a choir. Not a choir of fame or performance, but a choir of devotion, a choir of those who believed that the sea listened. Their voices rose softly at first, a fragile blend of tones shaped by reverence. Then, as the echoes gathered and swelled, the cavern itself began to sing. Sounds traveled through the stone pillars, vibrating, deepening, stretching into harmonies no single person could have shaped alone. Those who stood outside the cavern claimed they could feel the ground hum beneath their feet. Those who listened from the cliff tops said the waves changed color under the moon, shifting from silver to a faint, dreamlike green. Some claimed the stars above the water dimmed and brightened in time with the rhythm below. But inside the sanctuary, it was said that the air glowed, that breath itself became visible, that every note shimmered like dust caught in wandering torchlight. Some believed the cavern was a threshold, a place where human voices slipped through cracks in the stone and entered the sea, where they mingled with the ocean's ancient hum, where they became part of something larger, something older, something waiting. Others said the sea was teaching them, echoing back secrets that had been buried since the first tide touched the first shore. Secrets of creation, secrets of forgetting, secrets of return. For generations, the choir continued. Their songs became part of the coastline's breath, woven into the fabric of waves and wind. Fishermen spoke of soft melodies drifting across the water at night. Travelers claimed they felt an unseen music under their feet when they camped near the cliffs. But as all things do, the world shifted. Seasons changed their rhythm. Winds grew harsher. Storms shaped the coastline anew. And one evening, some say it was under a blood moon. Others say it was beneath a cloak of thick fog. The sea rose. Not as a wave, not as a storm, but as though responding to a call no one understood. The water crept into the cavern, filling the sanctuary slowly, silently, with the gentleness of a mother gathering a child. The pillars trembled, but did not break. The carvings darkened, but did not fade. The chamber filled until no human voice could reach its ceiling, until every echo was swallowed by the shifting currents. And the choir? Some say they escaped. Some say they were taken. Some say they became part of the ocean's breath forever. Where memory fades, truth becomes soft, pliable, wrapped in the hush of the centuries. All that remains is the sense, felt by sailors drifting near the cliffs, felt by divers who brave those waters, that the cavern still holds its resonance, that beneath the silence, this song continues, not loud, not clear, but present, a hum that rises when the moon is right, a tremor that moves through the ribs of the earth, a faint, sacred echo floating beneath the surf, like a lullaby from a dream half remembered. Some believe the choir's final note was never finished, that it still lingers somewhere under the waves, waiting for a listener willing to hear what lies beneath the ordinary pulse of the world. Others whisper that the sanctuary has changed, that stone and sea, after living together so long, have merged into a single living instrument, one that sings when storms roll across the horizon, one that sighs when tides shift from one age to another. The cavern, they say, has become an unseen cathedral, a place where sound roams freely, unbound by breath, unbound by time, a place where lost voices wander, weaving themselves into the ocean's endless hymn. And if you stand on the cliff's edge at dusk, when the wind softens and the tide hums its low, patient song, you might sense it too, the faintest echo rising from beneath the surface, a shimmering undertone held within the turning of the waves, a whisper shaped from salt and memory, drifting upward like a prayer. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. But the sea keeps its secrets gently. And somewhere below, where pillars sleep and spiral glimmer in darkness, the ancient hymn continues. Slow, eternal, tender, woven into the tides of time. A song without beginning, a song without end, a song that drifts forever in the quiet spaces where water meets stone, and where the forgotten finds its way back into the world's unspoken breath. And so, as night deepens and the shoreline fades into shadow, let the sound carry you, not to answers, not to certainty, but to that soft and sacred place where echoes bloom and stories sleep, where the sea sings, where memory lingers, where the choir hidden beneath the tides of time still hums its gentle, ceaseless song. The veiled gate at the edge of all journeys, it is said, that in the farthest reach of the wandering sands, where the breath of the world grows thin and the colours of day dissolve into a muted dusk, there stands a gate unlike any other ever carved by memory or hand. Some call it a mirage that learned to hold its shape. Others, an ancient threshold left behind by a people who moved as quietly as the moon. But most simply say that the gate waits, patient, veiled, and listening, and at the edge of all journeys. And so, beneath a sky drifting into violet silence, a lone traveller approaches. Their name is lost to time, swallowed by the shifting dunes and the long hush of forgotten centuries. What remains is the scene. Twilight cooling the horizon, sand turning soft as powdered gold, and the gate rising from the earth as though lifted by an exhale of the desert itself. Its surface is impossibly smooth, worn not by chisels or tools, but by something far gentler. It glows faintly, like stone that has learned to remember the sun. The traveller pauses, their silhouettes small against the towering arch. The wind curls around the stones, humming through unseen cracks like a voice, lingering between worlds. The air feels thick with the weight of stories, as if every grain of dust carries a whisper of what once was. It is here, in this stillness, in this ancient breath, that the tale truly begins. Whispers tell us that the gate was born before maps learned to describe the world, before lines and borders claimed to know where land ended and wonder began. Scholars of old texts insist it was crafted by a civilization of light, a people who believed that every journey, no matter how winding, returned the traveler to illumination. Some fragments speak of a ritual undertaken at twilight, when the world thins and memory loosens its grasp. Others mention a rite of departure, performed not for the living, but for the memories that refuse to fade. As twilight deepens, the smooth face of the gate seems to shift. Its arch is tall enough to swallow the final rays of the sun, cradling warmth that the night cannot steal. The traveler steps closer, and the sand beneath their feet sinks softly, as if recognizing the moment. The gate is veiled, not by cloth or curtain, but by a shimmering thinness in the air, like heat rising from stone, or breath frosting in winter. It is difficult to tell where the stone ends and the sky begins. Some claim the veil is woven from the leftover echoes of a forgotten language. Others say it is the residue of countless departures, the trace of all who once stepped through and left their stories behind. But beneath the silence, there is no demand, no command. Only a quiet invitation, as gentle as a candle's wavering flame. In forgotten corners of the earth, scrolls have been found with traces of ink that speak of the veiled gate. Many are fragmented, broken by time, and carried across continents by winds that remember more than we do. Some fragments describe the gate as a portal to another world. Not a place of stone and soil, but a landscape drifting across the surface of the mind. A place where memory walks beside you, taking shape in the mist. Other scrolls contradict this entirely, offering a simpler belief that the gate marked the end of all wanderings, the final point where weary souls came to rest, to breathe, to release the bindings of their long journeys. And still others suggest the gate was neither portal nor monument, but rather a mirror, a silent reminder that every traveler carries within them their own labyrinth of beginnings and endings. The traveler rests their hand against the stone. Its surface feels cool, yet not cold, smooth, yet not lifeless. Some believe the stones still echo with the hands that shaped them. The gentle touch of artisans who carved not with tools, but with the soft pressure of breath, as though coaxing the gate into existence rather than forcing it. Where memory fades, the gate seems to gather it again, stitching lost moments into its surface. You can almost see faint spirals etched into the stone, buried under layers of dust. They glimmer briefly in the fading light, like stars trying to speak. The wind stirs, and for a moment, the veil trembles. It is said that those who built the gate lived not by the rise of suns, but by the rise of memory. Their calendars charted not seasons, but awakenings. Moments of clarity, of forgetting, of return. Their temples opened not to the sky, but inward, toward chambers where silence was kept like a sacred flame. Some legends call them the Lumina, some call them the Veiled Ones. Others refer only to the people who walked without shadow. What little remains of their story is sifted through contradictions. One text claims they vanished in a single night, swallowed by starlight that descended upon their cities like a great oceanic wave. Another suggests they simply learned to step beyond the horizon of ordinary sight, leaving behind only the structures they no longer needed. Archaeologists, poets, and wanderers alike have tried to decipher the truth, but the desert holds its silence tightly. And perhaps, as some believe, the truth is not meant to be known, but felt. The traveler, standing before the gate, feels a subtle pulse beneath their fingertips, as if the stone remembers something, or someone, as if the centuries have only deepened its longing. Some say the gate is a threshold through which all journeys pass, even those not taken by foot. It is a place where endings gather to rest before dissolving back into beginnings. A place where forgotten dreams come to whisper their final breaths. Others claim it was built as an act of devotion, a monument marking the boundary between the seen and the unseen, between the stories we tell and the quieter ones we carry like lanterns inside our ribs. And there are tales, softer still, of travelers who arrived at the gate with questions heavy on their hearts. When they stepped through, the stories say, they found themselves in a landscape made entirely of memory. Not theirs, but the world's. They would walk upon plains of forgotten oceans, or sit beside rivers that once flowed through cities now hidden beneath sand. And when they returned, if they returned, they spoke little. Only that the gate had shown them something that words could not bear. But who can say what is myth and what is memory? In the quiet of twilight, both become the same gentle dust drifting across the dunes. The traveler breathes in, the veil stirs again, and the world grows softer. As night begins its slow descent, the moon rises, pale and unhurried. Its soft light washes over the gate, revealing faint star marks etched into the stone. Marks that only glow when touched by moonlight. Marked by the moon. Marked by memory. Marked by all that once was and may be again. The traveler takes a slow step forward. The veil ripples like a sigh, parting just enough to reveal the archer's empty center, filled with nothing but deepening sky. Is it a passage? A mirror, a resting place for the spirit of wandering itself? The traveler does not know. But the silence waiting beyond the veil feels spacious, almost tender. As if the gate offers not answers, but room. Room to breathe, to release, to begin again. Perhaps that is all any traveler truly seeks at the end of their journey. And so, without urgency, without fear, the traveler steps through. Nothing dramatic happens. No burst of light, no collapse of sand, only a widening stillness, a quiet deep enough to hold every unspoken question, every unfinished path, every memory that ever sought a resting place. The air beyond the gate feels lighter, vast. It carries the scent of ancient stone and the softness of distant rain. Though no clouds hang in the sky, there is only silence, glimmering like a thin veil itself. When the traveler looks back, the gate stands unchanged. Yet something feels different. Perhaps it is the moonlight. Perhaps it is the traveler's own breath. Perhaps it is simply the way night holds the world in gentler hands. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. The wind hushes. The sands settle. The world exhales. And the gate, the veiled gate at the edge of all journeys, glows faintly under the moon, its presence both distant and intimately near. A reminder that every path, no matter how uncertain or shrouded in dust, eventually leads us toward ourselves, toward home, toward the soft, luminous silence that waits in the deepest fold of the night. The island that dreamed in circles of fire and mist. It is said that far beyond the last familiar lines on ancient sea charts, where the blue of the world deepens into something almost celestial, there lies an island shaped like a perfect ring, a circle held upon the water, a forgotten crown resting in the ocean's cradle. Most who sailed those waters never found it, and many believe the island existed only in the quiet breaths between waves, revealing itself only when the horizon stood utterly still. Whispers tell us that the island does not rise from the sea in the way other lands do. Instead, it appears slowly, with the patience of a long dream returning. At dawn, when the air is still and the world is softened by a pale silver-blue haze, its shape forms gently from mist, as though the sea itself is imagining it into being. One moment, there is only a veil of vapor and a faint line of light. The next, the curved silhouette of volcanic stone lingers like a memory resurfacing. And so our chapter begins here, in the first quiet breaths of sunrise, with the island drifting into view like an ancient spirit exhaling after a long sleep. The sky grows warm with subtle gold. The sea glimmers in bands of rose, and the ring-shaped land darkens and brightens all at once, neither awake nor dreaming, hovering between worlds. Some old seafarers believe the island was alive, not in the way forests breathe or tides move, but alive in a deeper, older rhythm. They said it inhaled mist and exhaled fire, that its heart, though long dormant, still pulsed with the faint inner embers beneath mountains of cooled basalt, that the island itself turned in slow, imperceptible cycles, like a being listening to ancient tides. Perhaps this was only myth, perhaps not, for beneath the silence of its stone, beneath layers of the moss and ash and thyme, there are carvings, still sharp despite the centuries, carvings of spirals, circles within circles, endless loops that trace the same path again and again until the edges blur and meanings evade the waking mind. Many who visited the island, few though they were, spoke of these symbols with hushed reverence. Some believe they were marks left by the first navigators who ever crossed the great waters. Others claimed they were celestial diagrams, maps of stars that are no longer seen, or patterns that the night sky once followed before shifting into its present shape. But there were those who whispered something different, that the spirals were not maps of the heavens or marks of men, but reflections of the island's own dreaming, that the land itself remembered, layer upon layer, cycle upon cycle, fire upon mist, the echoes of what it once was. Where memory fades, the island remembers. Where stories sink beneath the waves, the island's spirals rise with them. We step ashore as the mist curls low around our ankles, soft as breath and warm with the last remnants of the night. The sand here is fine and dark, almost metallic, as though the sea has polished countless fragments of old fire. Every footfall feels ceremonial, like walking upon the surface of an extinguished star. The island's slopes rise before us, not high, not sharp, but gentle, like the curve of a sleeping creature curled inward. The path winds upward in slow arcs, and along its sides we find the carvings again. Spirals large and small, some tight like coiled springs, others vast enough to encircle a fallen boulder. All whisper the same silent invitation: return, return, return. As we climb, the light thickens. A soft golden glow sinks through the mist in long pale ribbons that drift through broken archways of stone. It is said these archways once formed a ring of shrines around the volcanic heart. No roofs remain, no doors. Only the gesture of structures, outlines of forgotten devotion, softened edges marked by centuries of salt and wind. Here, the air vibrates faintly, as though carrying an echo of distant music. Perhaps it is only imagination, perhaps not, for the island is known to hum, not loudly, not in words or tones that reach the ear like notes of a song, but in a subtler pulse, a murmur you feel behind the ribs, a quiet resonance in the soles of your feet. It is the sensation of entering a place that once knew great brightness, a place that held fire without burning, a place shaped by rituals now dissolved into sand and ash. Some ancient myths speak of guardians who tended a sacred flame here, a flame described in every surviving tale as fire that did not burn, a light without heat, a glow that shimmered like dawn, trapped inside a crystal heart. It was carried, so the stories say, in a stone bowl kept deep within the ring of shrines. A bowl carved to match the shape of the island itself. Perhaps the flame was a symbol, an emblem of life, renewing within destruction, of warmth dwelling inside stillness. Or perhaps it was real, for strange lights have long been reported, drifting above the central crater at night, moving in slow spirals, dancing in shapes too fluid to be lightning and too purposeful to be illusion. As we reach the ridge, we find the inner circle spread below us, a vast bowl of land, quiet and green, where the crater's mouth once burned. Mist rises gently from its floor, swirling in soft spirals that mirror the carvings on the outer stones. It feels as though we are looking down into a dream that has not finished forming. The silence here is deep but welcoming, not empty, not cold. Rather, it holds the kind of quiet found in ancient libraries, in temples where candles burn low, in places where the world chooses to whisper instead of speak. It is said that those who listen closely can hear the islands breathing in the shifting of the mist, as if the land draws in memory and exhales forgetting, as if it absorbs stories, keeps them safe, and returns them only when the listener is ready. Slowly, with steps softened by awe, we descend toward the center. The air grows warmer here, though no flame burns. The stones beneath our feet thrum faintly, a lingering heartbeat of the volcano that once shaped this ring. Ferns sway in slow rhythms, their fronds catching dew that glows with the early sun. In the center stands a bowl-shaped depression, the ancient basin where the sacred fire is said to have rested. Once it might have glowed with an otherworldly light. Now only smooth stone remains, its surface etched with spirals so fine they seem almost made of breath rather than carving. We pause. We breathe. We let the stillness wrap around us like a warm mist. A quiet understanding unfurls. This place is not meant to be solved. It is not a puzzle, nor a riddle to be conquered. It is a memory of fire, of cycles, of beginnings, braided gently into endings. Standing in the basin, one feels not small but held, as though embraced by a presence that has watched ages turn like pages of a ceremonial text. And perhaps that is why ancient navigators returned here, again and again, despite the storms that veiled the island. Not to seek treasure, not to steal fire, but to enter a circle where time softened, where the mind could drift freely, where the spirit could walk the rim between worlds. For this island feels like a place not reached by map or compass, but by remembering. Many who wrote of it spoke as though they had been here before they ever arrived, as though something deep within them recognized the shape of the ring, the scent of the mist, the hum of the stone, a place half remembered, half forgotten, a place that feels like returning. As the morning grows brighter, light pours gently into the basin, turning the mist into a soft silver veil. Everything slows. Even the air seems to move with reverence, drifting like incense smoke in a quiet temple. The spirals on the stone shimmer faintly, but only for a moment, just long enough to suggest the fire once lived here in truth. Perhaps it was never meant to be captured. Perhaps it was a dream of the earth itself, a breathing that rises and falls across centuries, a flame that appears only to those who move slowly enough to notice. And so the island begins to fade again, as all dream places do. Mist gathers along the ridge. The ocean's breath grows heavier, edges soften, contours blur. Soon, the ring of land becomes only a silhouette against the light. Then only a whisper of a shadow. Then not even that. Only a gentle brightness where stone once stood, as though the sea has reclaimed the dream for a little while longer. And we leave with nothing certain, nothing concluded. Only the impression that something ancient has touched our thoughts with feather-light fingers. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Some islands only appear when the heart moves slowly enough. And somewhere, in the wide cradle of the ocean, in a place marked by the moon and hidden by breath and memory, the island dreams on. In circles of fire, in circles of mist, in endless whispering return. The silent gate that guarded a civilization of light. It is said that in forgotten corners of the earth, where the horizon stretches like an unbroken breath and the wind carries no name at all, there rests a gate that neither seals nor opens. A structure without walls to defend, without path to guide the traveler forward, without shadow to betray its purpose. It stands alone, silent or wavering, like a thought the world began but never finished. The grass that surrounds it moves like a murmured prayer. Soft, uniform waves, as though the land itself were breathing beneath it. The gate's pillars rise in sandstone yellow and faded copper, etched with patterns that resemble sunrise pressed into stone. Rays fanning outward, curves spiraling like galaxies, reduced to a single gesture of the hand. Symbols marked by the moon and by something older still. By daylight, the inscriptions appear faint, as though shy in the sun's presence. But when dusk folds itself gently over the earth, and the stars open their patient eyes, the carvings glow with a pallid, quiet shimmer, like the lingering trace of extinguished fire. Some believe this shimmer is only the moonlight catching quartz veins in the stone. Others whisper that it is something more, a memory remembering itself, a beacon still burning for those lost to the centuries. Whispers tell us that this was once the boundary of a civilization of light, a sanctuary of silent wisdom where knowledge did not travel by tongue or tablet, but by presence, where teachers spoke with their breathing, and learners received answers without a single word exchanged, where memory was shared like water and illumination arrived not through revelation, but through recognition, as if rediscovering something your soul never forgot. Picture the scene. Overcast skies in the quiet after rain, the scent of damp earth, droplets perched on grass blades like transparent beads from a celestial necklace. The field stretches into a soft mist, misty green melting into dusk sky blue, until the world fades as though hesitant to exist beyond this point. In the center stands the gate, crumbling only slightly at its base, where time nibbles rather than devours. Its lintel bears a single star-shaped emblem, half eroded, half remembered by the stone. Beneath the silence, beneath the stillness, there is a sensation. Not sound, not sight, but awareness. Some describe it as a welcome, others as a warning, most as neither. Only acknowledgement, like the subtle nod between travelers who recognize one another's journey without knowing one another's name. When one steps nearer, they claim the air changes, as if someone has just finished speaking and only the echo remains. The legend of the civilization of light is not kept in a single culture, nor anchored to one continent, nor told in the same tongue. It appears like star-marked fragments scattered across the world. A mural in a desert monastery, painted with halos around silent figures. A clay shard found beneath oceanic dust, depicting a gate with no city behind it. A scroll discovered in a mountain shrine describing a people who spoke to the sky and heard in return. None confirm the story. All intimate it. Historians approach the subject with caution, unsure whether they are tracing a civilization or a longing so ancient it became mistaken for memory. Some scholars argued the gate once led to the radiant city, where streets glowed underfoot and architecture curved like breath. They wrote of luminous pathways where star-forged lamps were never needed. Their manuscripts filled with sketches of arches that resembled wings unfurled. Mystics, however, spoke differently. They leaned closer to the firelight, voices wrapped in secrecy, and they told of a threshold between the seen and unseen, not a city to visit, but a realm to perceive. They believed the civilization of light was not lost, but veiled, not gone, but waiting, not reduced to dust, but transformed into something we are no longer gentle enough to witness. Where memory fades, the spirit fills the silence. In the deepening mystery, questions gather like clouds preparing for rain. Was the light technological, celestial, spiritual, metaphorical, real, and why? If such a people existed, did they disappear without a trace? Some say they ascended, others say they sank. Still others say they dissolved into the very fabric of night, unwilling to dim themselves to match the world's growing shadow. Those who have stood long enough before the gate claim something happens around the edges of perception. In the space between blink and breath, luminous pathways appearing for the briefest moment, like veins beneath translucent skin of the earth. Quiet halls materializing in peripheral vision, where the mist thickens and folds, as though draped over invisible pillars. Figures moving slowly, not ghostly, not sinister but gentle, like lantern light carried in patient hands, their forms indistinct, yet undeniably present, their movement a ritual, neither beginning nor ending, a rhythm older than time and softer than moonlit snow. It is said that these flickers are not hallucination, nor imagination, but invitation, the faintest reminder that light leaves echoes too. Not loud, not obvious, but lingering like warmth long after the flame has passed. As the journey through this legend continues, something subtle changes. Not in the tale, but in the listener. For the story does not crescendo to revelation. It dissolves gently into wonder. The civilization of light becomes less a place and more a presence. Less a destination and more a meditation. We begin to understand that illumination is not only found in torches carried high, in answers written in stone, in monuments that defy the erosion of centuries. Sometimes, illumination lives in the quiet acceptance that mysteries are companions, not obstacles. That some gates remain closed because their purpose is not to lead us forward, but to bring us inward. That the soft glow of wonder is brighter than certainty ever could be. The emotional arc gathers every thread. Curiosity, awe, melancholy, and weaves them gently like twilight weaving day into night, with no seam visible to the eye. Because wonder is not loud. It whispers, it breathes, it waits. Like the gate waits. Silent, steady, enduring. Guarding not a city, not a secret, but a question. What if light is not something we discover, but something we remember? And so, as the night settles deeper, and stars gather like ancient witnesses, the chapter softens. The field remains, grass moving like a murmured prayer. The carvings continue glowing faintly, as though touched by distant moons. The silence grows but does not feel empty. The gate holds its posture beneath pale starlight, unmoved by interpretation or expectation. It offers no revelation, no dramatic unveiling, no thunder, no trumpet, no certainty, only presence, only patience, only the serene reminder that some civilizations endure not in stone but in the quiet radiance they leave behind. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps its purpose is fulfilled each time a traveler pauses, breath slowing, heart listening, mind open. Some voices only echo when we are ready to hear. Some stories only bloom when darkness becomes gentle enough to let their petals unfurl. Some gates guard nothing but the silence required to notice the light already within us. And as the hour drifts deeper into night and sleep draws near like a tide upon the shores, the gate stands still, a sentinel of unanswered questions, a monument to wonder, guarding not a city, but a dream of a civilization of light whose wisdom glimmered softly across forgotten ages, and perhaps still glimmers gently within the quiet corners of those who remember to imagine. Where memory fades and the spirit continues, where knowledge ends, wonder begins, and the gate, silent, star-marked, etched with sunrise pressed into stone, remains, waiting, witnessing, enduring, not a threshold, not a boundary, but a reminder carved in sandstone and veiled in mystery. The light we seek may be the light we once carried, and still do, even now, even here, even in the hush between heartbeat and dream.